So let's just get right into these questions. You are a musician, right?
Yes.
Okay. What bands were you in then?
Okay, one of the bands that I was in was called The Plague. It was a gothic rock band in the 80s. I also were in an industrial band, early industrial style of music, and it was called Missing Foundation. And I was also in a punk grindcore band called Disassociate.
So then, what years were you in all those bands?
Well, I started in the bands in New York City, and when the whole scene started bubbling, I got involved in it. It was in the early 80s, and it went through the 80s, the 90s, and up to the 2000s, early 2000s.
So, what genre of music were your bands in?
Okay, the band The Plague was in the gothic rock scene in New York City in the early mid-80s. Black Rain was in the post-cyberpunk scene where industrial and technology and rock music blended together, which was really an interesting scene. The other band, Missing Foundation, was more industrial, tribal, guttural, city noises, landscapes, very aggressive, high energy band. Some people called it combat rock, is one of the labels that they mentioned. The other band, Disassociate, that was more, as we started as a punk rock band and slowly went heavier into the grindcore scene.
So, within these bands, what instruments did you play?
Okay, a majority of them I played was the electric bass guitar with a couple of pedals. Occasionally I played with keyboards. I also had keyboards on the floor as well as pedals. And in other projects, I was playing percussive found instruments like oil drums, sticking microphones inside their diesel tanks and ramming them and hitting them with sledgehammers, using power tools as well, and manipulating their sounds with effects.
So, how did being in a band, or bands in your case, impact your life as a whole?
As an impact, well, gave me a lot of creativity, so I was expanding my mind, and I was able to, with these bands, I was able to travel around the world, so I saw different cultures, and that was one of the things that I enjoyed in life was, oh, I wish I can go and see as much as I can around the world. And this music scene, and also being a musician, kind of gave me the way and the tools to get me to my dream.
Thank you. How did the scene change from not the 80s, but throughout the 90s specifically?
Yes, the 90s, that changed into the scenes in New York, okay, where I was in. So one of the scenes, you see it how it grew out of another scene and started to get very popular very quickly. And that was New York hardcore. Hardcore music came from the punk scene and also had some metal in there, mixing it together. And it was a solid, and it was a scene that is very big, and you saw it just growing. And then you saw other scenes growing out of that. So throughout the 90s, you saw that happening. The pop culture was still doing that same thing. Rap music was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger every time. So that was incorporated into a lot of different musics. And And then there was a lot of different, how would you say, categories of music. A lot of different genres started growing. And it was growing fast. There was little sections of different types of genres just keep growing through the 90s. It was definitely a growing period in time of music, from the underground to the mass media.
Okay. Thank you for coming, sir.
Oh.
It's been a pleasure to have you.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It was fun.